Through all the years of her reign, the land of Wales could not have been closer to my mother's heart.
It was supposed to be a celebration, a crisp spring afternoon, the kind the British press likes to describe as majestic. King Charles III, steady in posture but pale in complexion, stood behind the podium at the Royal College of Agriculture. He was there to speak about climate change, land preservation, and legacy, issues he has advocated for decades. The cameras were rolling. The crowd was standing. The live stream had just crossed the 3-minute mark. Then it happened. The king's right hand trembled in mid-sentence as he spoke about the sacred balance between nature and man. His jaw slacked, his eyes fluttered, and before anyone could process it, King Charles collapsed on the floor. Gasps, screams, running steps. The live stream froze. The royal staff rushed to cut the feed. Unfortunately, it was too late. In that brief, brutal moment, which was captured by thousands of people watching on phones, televisions, and press risers, the crown appeared to shatter. It wasn't merely a stumble, not a graceful seated retreat. It was a fall, unscripted, unforgiving, and public. Within minutes, palace officials were sprinting. Security had locked down the venue. Paramedics appeared. Prince William, who was attending a separate engagement in Berkshire, abruptly left. Camilla's motorcade was rerouted. Kate Middleton was unavailable for almost half an hour, which royal correspondents immediately noted as unusual. Outside the palace gates, a crowd began to form. By the time the BBC interrupted its afternoon broadcast to report the incident, the world was already asking the question that the firm has worked for decades to avoid. What if the king does not get back up? For years, Charles had been the embodiment of continuity, the man who waited longer than any heir in modern history, only to enter a fractured monarchy, marred by scandal, grief, and generational shift. Many wondered if his reign would be symbolic, brief, or silent. No one expected it to stumble so violently and so quickly. Now there are whispers of stress, underlying conditions, and a monarchy forced into contingency mode behind the scenes, while attempting to project strength on the outside. No one, including the press, can deny what they witnessed. The monarch fell, and for the first time since Elizabeth's death, the British people are awakening to a terrifying reality. The crown may still shine, but its weight is beginning to fracture the man beneath it. There is a sound that still haunts those who were present. Not a thud, not a collective gasp, but Charles's voice is fading. According to an eyewitness in the third row, the king spoke softly and slower than usual. His posture was upright, but his face appeared flushed. Some people assumed it was emotion, others, the heat. But then his sentence abruptly came to an end, in the middle of a thought or a breath. He didn't finish the word, the guest observed. It was like someone hit pause on him. He felt a tremor in his hand, a blink that was too long, and then collapse. Not a graceful crumple, a fall, sudden, unshielded. "He just went down," said a senior palace aide who requested anonymity. "There's no warning. One moment he was talking, the next he was on the ground." It was 3:14 p.m. local time. Security was the first to move. Then there are aides. The event's medical staff then rushed from the back of the hall, weaving between chairs and stunned dignitaries. In a matter of seconds, the room had transformed from stately silence to stunned chaos. One staff member attempted to lift Charles. Another person held his wrist, looking for a pulse. Despite being ordered to turn off the cameras, they had already captured too much footage. "We were told to kill the feed," an employee at Royal Communications admitted. However, the stream was active for at least 20 seconds after he fell. People saw, and not only inside the venue. Thousands of people across the United Kingdom were watching on their phones. Royal fans, political observers, and students watching for school assignments all witnessed the king's fall. After the feed was cut, speculation began. Was this a stroke, a heart attack, a fainting spell? Nobody could say. But inside the event hall, the tension was thick with more than just fear. Denial. There was this moment, one guest recalled, when everyone just stood there. Nobody wanted to move. As if we hadn't acknowledged it, it wouldn't have happened. But it did. The panic behind the scenes was immediate. Paramedics from the nearby hospital arrived in 8 minutes. According to early reports, Charles was placed on a stretcher, but only after regaining partial consciousness. He was mumbling, one witness reported. "I didn't know where he was," said something about the Queen. Nonetheless, the phrase no one wanted to hear had already passed between two palace employees standing just feet away from the scene. "We need to start Menai Bridge." That is the code name for the official plan for the king's demise, and just saying it, even hypothetically, sent shivers down the spines of everyone who heard. "I've never seen so many phones ringing at once," said a palace press official. Everyone was attempting to get ahead of it, but the truth is that we were not ahead of anything. The king collapsed, publicly, visibly, and we couldn't hide it. Charles was transported by ambulance at 3:30 p.m., flanked by unmarked police cars. The hospital's location was not initially disclosed, a security precaution that only fueled speculation. The palace issued a statement at 3:52 p.m. His Majesty the King experienced a temporary health event during today's engagement. He was taken to the hospital for observation as a precaution. He is conscious and communicating with the staff. Additional updates will be provided in due course. What about inside the palace? There was no calm, because regardless of how they framed it, the images were out. The monarchy's carefully cultivated illusion of control, continuity, and composure was shattered in the first few minutes, with a silent collapse, a stretcher, and a scramble of staff was abruptly gone. As King Charles's body was being rushed through a secure back exit of the Royal College of Agriculture, the palace phones began to ring. Courtiers inside Buckingham Palace were in disarray. Not since the death of Queen Elizabeth has the royal machine been caught off guard. And this time, it wasn't a carefully orchestrated moment of mourning. It was a real-time medical emergency that the public had witnessed firsthand. "It wasn't supposed to happen like that," a staff member whispered. "Not in front of the cameras, not in front of the world." Within 15 minutes of the collapse, the palace gates were shut. The royal standard continued to fly as a deliberate reminder that the king was still alive. But inside, the atmosphere was charged with fear. Aides started combing through schedules. Appointments were canceled. International calls were made. The head of royal protocol reportedly yelled at a junior assistant when they couldn't find the updated chain of command briefing for an active crisis. In the midst of it all, two questions stood out more than the others. Where is Queen Camilla? So what do we tell William? Camilla had planned to attend a private luncheon in Mayfair with select members of the Commonwealth Women's League. However, according to insiders, she never made it. When she was informed, she reportedly directed her driver to reroute to Clarence House, where she could be briefed privately. But by the time she arrived, Charles was already on his way to the hospital. That's when things began to fracture. "She was pacing," said a source familiar with her inner circle. "Hands are shaking. She's completely beside herself." Another aide added, "She screamed at a staffer who mentioned the live stream. 'Don't you dare tell me this is already out there,' she exclaimed." Yes, it was. Meanwhile, Prince William was removed from an economic roundtable in Berkshire. Security swept the building. His car was seen driving away minutes later, not to the hospital, but directly to Buckingham Palace. This, experts say, was significant. "He didn't go to see his father," one royal correspondent tweeted. "He went to assume his role, whatever that may be in the hours to come." By 4:15 p.m., senior royals were locked in emergency meetings. According to sources, a secure video call with Princess Anne, Prince Edward, and high-level advisors was initiated within an hour. Princess Anne was reportedly furious that no early warning had been given about Charles's health, implying that the palace had been downplaying symptoms for weeks. Catherine, Princess of Wales, was out of reach for nearly 30 minutes inside Windsor Castle. When she did respond, she immediately cleared her schedule and was seen leaving in a black vehicle without saying anything. She wasn't panicking, a source said. She was preparing. However, it was Queen Camilla's reported behavior that received the most attention inside the palace. "She was weeping," said a footman who asked to remain anonymous. "It was not theatrical. It was grief, real grief." At one point, she was overheard asking a staff member, What if he doesn't recover from this? So, what happens next? That's when the whisper resumed, the same one heard at the site of the collapse. Menai Bridge. It was not time to activate it, not yet, but the protocol, planning, and contingency had to be dusted off, just in case. Because, as one courtier stated clearly, the king went down. That changes everything. By 5 p.m., London had become quiet. Shops remained open, but radio frequencies were low. Televisions and pubs alternated between muted sports coverage and the BBC's somber breaking news broadcast. People were not shouting. They were scrolling, waiting. Across the country, the headlines were the same. King Charles collapses mid-speech, condition unknown. Small crowds had already gathered in Windsor, outside Balmoral, and at Buckingham Palace's gates. Not tourists, not royal superfans. Ordinary Britons, some holding flowers, others with Union Jacks folded under their arms. A woman in her 70s near Kensington Palace told a Sky News reporter, "I was there when Diana died." This has that feel to it. Different, but the air feels the same. What about online? Chaos. Twitter, now X, erupted within seconds of the livestream being cut. #King Charles, #Buckingham, #Is the king dead, #Camilla, #William the next, #Queen Kate. It's all trending. Everyone is climbing. One video clip, shaky and grainy but unmistakable, showed Charles slumping over before falling to the floor. Before the end of the hour, it had received over 20 million views. Royal public relations teams were issuing copyright claims in real time, but it was like trying to plug a dam with sewing needles. "It's not just that he collapsed," one American CNN commentator stated. "We saw it. Monarchs do not fall on camera. Monarchs are not meant to fall at all." But he fell. And the longer the palace's silence lasted, the darker the speculation became. By 6 p.m., the BBC had halted all regular programming. Radio 4 switched to rolling news mode. Black suits began to appear on air. According to an unconfirmed medical leak from the hospital, Charles lost consciousness twice while being transported to emergency care. Another tweet, now deleted, claimed that senior doctors had been concerned for weeks about cardiac arrhythmias. None of this was verified. Everything was being consumed faster than it could be corrected. Meanwhile, world leaders started to respond. In French, President Macron wrote, "France stands beside the United Kingdom in concern and hope." President Biden stated, "Our thoughts and prayers are with His Majesty and the British people." Even the Pope sent a brief message, wishing for peace, health, and strength for a servant of unity. However, the mood in Britain was not hopeful. It was still. A collective breath, suspended. The palace's second statement, released at 6:45 p.m., exacerbated the situation. His Majesty remains under observation. The royal household appreciates the public's concern and will provide further updates as necessary. No images, no footage of Charles waving from his hospital bed. There is no physician statement, just silence. And in that silence, the nation and the world started to wonder, was the crown going to change hands again? Not after the rain, but after a fall. At 7:12 p.m., two black Range Rovers entered Buckingham Palace's rear gates, unmarked, window-tinted, but keen-eyed royal watchers recognized the vehicle. This was Prince William's, and he didn't smile. He did not stop to wave. He did not acknowledge the cameras. He walked into the palace like a man in command. Internally, things had changed. According to sources, King Charles was still in the hospital, stable but undergoing additional tests. He had reportedly regained full consciousness, but aides admitted he was dazed, unable to recall exactly when he collapsed. However, outside of his hospital room, the monarchy could not afford confusion. Someone needed to take the lead. That person was William. By 7:30 p.m., sources confirmed that he had convened an emergency roundtable, the first of its kind since Queen Elizabeth II's death. Senior advisors, legal experts, and high-level members of the Privy Council were reportedly looped in through encrypted channels. What's the purpose? Prepare for succession? No, Charles did not die, but his collapse had hastened everything. "William isn't just stepping in," explained one palace aide. "He's stepping forward. This is extremely important because unlike previous crises in which the palace was caught off guard, this one saw a future king taking action rather than reacting. According to reports, he did not call his father first. It was for Prime Minister Rishi Sunak. The content of that call is still classified. However, speculation runs wild. Some claim they discussed temporary powers. Others believe William requested early briefings on Operation Menai Bridge, the meticulously planned protocol for King Charles's death. Others believe William was asking an even bigger question. How soon can a regency be enacted? A regency can be declared under UK law if the monarch is deemed incapable of carrying out his duties due to illness, mental incapacity, or prolonged absence. It requires medical approval and the consent of several key figures, including the Lord Chancellor and at least 3 other royals. Was William preparing for that? Insiders won't confirm, but they won't deny it either. A royal historian tweeted, "Charles may recover, but tonight we're seeing William move into a situation he can no longer avoid." Inside the palace, there are whispers of staff reassignments. One senior official reportedly told colleagues, "We're no longer in a support role. We are preparing a handover." Then there's the visual. William is standing in the same room where his father once waited for the crown. Now the father is lying in a hospital bed. What about the son? He's in the eye of the storm, but not because he's chasing power, because he's up next. He always was. However, the future is no longer purely theoretical. It is knocking. The man answering is prepared. While the nation focused on King Charles and Prince William's growing presence, something quieter and more emotionally charged was taking place behind closed doors. 2 women, 2 titles, 2 distinctly different reactions. Queen Camilla was reportedly distraught. She burst into tears when she received the hospital's second update, which revealed that Charles had briefly lost consciousness again during early tests. She kept saying, "This wasn't supposed to happen," explained one palace insider. Her hands shook. She refused to eat. At one point, she demanded that all employees leave the room. Camilla had stood by Charles's side through scandal, exile, redemption, and coronation. They had fought harder than any other royal couple in recent memory to secure their position at the top. Just as their reign began, it was threatened by something other than controversy, but by fragility. She wasn't ready to be queen alone, the aide explained. She was always queen with him. Meanwhile, in a different wing of the palace, Catherine, Princess of Wales, appeared as a shadow, calm and composed but visibly guarded. She did not speak to the press, did not smile. What about behind the scenes? She took control. She was in the communications room within minutes, a senior aide stated, asking who was running point on messaging, reviewing what has been said, what had not. What would you say if things got worse? Kate, the Duchess who became a princess, the wife who became the future queen, had spent years preparing for this moment. She did not cry, she did not freeze, she acted. While Camilla cried, Kate briefed. And while neither woman had asked for this moment, they were now at a crossroads, one shaped by grief, the other by readiness. Inside the palace, the contrast was quietly noted. Camilla was emotional, understandably. What about Kate? An official paused. She looked like someone who had already made peace with what's coming, not death. However, this is a transition. While the king rested, the heir arose. The next queen was already working, not because she desired the crown early, but someone needed to hold it steady until it passed. If the palace struggled to control the narrative, the internet made it impossible. By midnight, TikTok had received over 80 million views under hashtags such as #KingCharles, #RoyalCollapse, and #LongLiveTheKing. Dozens of body language experts analyzed footage of the king's final moments on stage. YouTubers started uploading countdown videos titled, Is this the end of King Charles? And the crown's final breath? But it wasn't just speculation, it was a conspiracy. One thread with over 10,000 reposts in 2 hours claimed Charles was poisoned. Another claimed that the stress of Prince Harry's upcoming memoir and rumored lawsuit had caused a breakdown. Others claimed that the monarchy was being cleansed from within, with William, Kate, and the palace elite orchestrating a smooth transition, capitalizing on the king's demise to shift power. Think about it, one viral post stated. No real footage from the hospital. There is no real update. There are no Camilla images. They are preparing us for the next phase, and the king isn't involved. Nonetheless, not all reactions were dark. Outside Buckingham Palace, a quiet vigil had started. Dozens of candles flickered on the iron gates. Flowers appeared. Notes written in careful, slanted script simply stated, "Get well, Your Majesty." Windsor residents stood silently, some dressed in black and others holding flags. A small choir even started singing "God Save the King," low and uncertain, but united. The international media continued to roll. CNN aired an overnight segment titled "Monarchy in Crisis." The Guardian hosted a livestream thread titled "Waiting for the Crown. King Charles's health sparks global concern." And royal observers debated whether the country would awaken to a new sovereign or a king forever altered. Back online, one tweet captured the digital mood. No matter where you stand on the monarchy, watching a man fall like that, knowing he carries centuries of history, it shakes something in you. Because for the first time in modern memory, the British people witnessed a sovereign collapse in real time, rather than in myth. And now, regardless of what the morning brought, the illusion of permanence was dispelled. By dawn, the official word had arrived. A carefully worded palace statement issued just after 6 a.m. read, "His Majesty the King spent a comfortable night in the hospital and is being closely monitored. Doctors are cautiously optimistic. His Majesty is awake, alert, and thankful for the outpouring of support. There were no photographs, no video. There's no proof of life, just words." And for a country that had seen their monarch fall to the ground in real time, words suddenly felt inadequate. The palace's message was straightforward. This was a temporary health event. Nothing serious. There's no need to panic. However, the people had already seen too much. In the span of 12 hours, the United Kingdom had stared directly into the one truth that the monarchy has always tried to hide from view: mortality. The king collapsed. The heir activated. The queen wept. The princess did not flinch. And now, the institution holds its breath. Even if King Charles recovers and walks out of that hospital with a wave and a smile, the image will be etched in memory. A sovereign is lying still, a throne that is not currently occupied. Insiders report that contingency plans are being quietly updated. Regency clauses were reviewed. Crisis teams were reshuffled. The term abdication has not been used publicly, but behind the palace gates, no one dares to rule anything out, because coronations and jubilees alone do not shape history. Sometimes it changes with a fall. As one BBC commentator put it, just before the broadcast faded to the national anthem, what happens next is not solely about health. It is about trust, in the crown, within the family, in what it means to carry it forward, even if the man wearing it stumbles. And so the watch starts, not for death, but only for the transition, regardless of how this ends. The monarchy can never say again, "It didn't happen in front of the world." It did. The question now is not whether the king will rise. The question is whether the crown is ready to fall for the first time in this generation.